Liverpool, one of the most famous cities in Great Britain and home to the friendliest people. The city is famous for its docks and the huge role that they played in the industrial development of Britain. They ended up paying a huge price for that in the Second World War with extensive bombing. Since then, it has become a powerhouse for producing talent, with the Mersey beat in the 60s and four lads who shook the Wirral. We've had Kendodd, Cilla Black and the Liverbirds. And let's not forget Halfmanhalfbiscuit. But what of its prehistoric past? In this video, we're going to have a look at some incredible Neolithic stones with extensive artwork and an equally incredible story about their survival over the last 250 years. This video was actually suggested by one of you lot, subscriber Chris Ball. I assume he's a subscriber, there's no way of telling. And I'd like to thank Chris for making the recommendation, because although I was faintly aware of these Neolithic stones, I'm not sure I would have ever made a video about them unless he'd have come up with the idea. So cheers, mate, for that. Filming took place on one of these yellow or amber weather warning days that we seem to get so many of nowadays. I started off filming at the waterfront with these legendary buildings that most of you will be familiar with. Who remembers the Liverbirds? I certainly do, particularly Nerys Hughes, the epitome of 1970s femininity. But our location is further down the River Mersey and inland a little bit. As you can see, it's now very much part of Liverpool, but that really has only happened in the last 100 years or so ago. Now, it's the classic location for a Neolithic burial mound. Back in the day, 5,000 years ago, this would have been gently sloping land running down to the estuary. We're at the junction of druidscrossroad and Calderstones Road, so some clues there for us. And now back in the 18th century, this was sort of open countryside and part of the Hart Hill estate. Now in 1765, there was a burial mound here with 3 stones visible. And there were some excavations and some urns were discovered, probably later Bronze Age interments into this Neolithic mound. As is so often the way when we're looking at the 18th century, in 1789, this large burial mound was ruined. It was hacked into to access sandstone, to be ground up to provide mortar for the extensive developments that were starting to take place. And the mound was finally wiped out in around about 1805, when the remaining soil was removed to provide sandstone for the mortar for the building of a Mr. Bragg's house. Nothing much to brag about there, Mr. Bragg. But fortunately at this stage, somebody did notice the incredible artwork on these stones, and they actually found some more as the mound was being destroyed. So they ended up with 6 highly decorated Neolithic stones, the remnants of a chambered burial mound. In 1845, these were set up in a sort of phony druidic circle close to the place where they had originally been found. So this is where the Calder Stones were moved to in 1854. They stood behind railings here. Nice benchmark for all you benchmark enthusiasts there. You can just about make out the old sign for the Calder Stones. That's not actually bad value, is it? So by the early 1800s, the stones and the chambered burial mound that had been there unmolested for 5,000 years had been completely disrupted. But luckily the stones were retained, and one of the earliest images that we have of that, I think, is 1825. You might get that as an overlay, and you can see on there that it does depict the artwork on the stones. And that really is the most fascinating thing about the Calder Stones, is the incredible artwork on them. Now, I should also point out that the earliest written reference to the Calder Stones, with a variety of other names. Roger Stone, Dodger Stone. I'll put them on the screen. I think it's 1586, and that was written down because they were being used as a boundary marker, and there was a dispute, and that account refers to one of the stones having been removed around about 1550. Still sheltering under my brolly, unfortunately. We're now at the greenhouse, the palm house I think it was called. There used to be loads of these greenhouses in the park here. This is where the stones were moved to in 1964 and where they remained until 2019. So that central area that you can see in the middle is where the Calder Stones used to be. By 2019, there was real concern about the deterioration of the stones being kept in this greenhouse, and they were moved to this special structure where they are open to the elements but protected directly from the rain. They're sort of arranged in this fashion to sort of symbolise their original function as the entrance to a chambered burial mound. Okay, so I'm here with Roy, who is going to tell us a little bit about the Calder Stones in their new, more secure home.
And they had a piece over the top.
It's a dolmen, wasn't it? They think it was a dolmen.
It's like the dolmen style of it, led into a big bay, big mound. These are marking the entranceway. This has been the entrance stone to the burial mound.
Right.
And it would mark the passageway into the next world.
Wow. And they really think that the feet mark is Neolithic.
Neolithic. They're northern markings, like a Celtic type marking.
There's a lot of them in Ireland, isn't there?
That's right, yeah. Carving marks.
Ah, yeah.
You see some of this. This is modern graffiti.
There is a bit of graffiti, Roy, isn't there? Look at that there.
This is all when it was in the...
is this when it stood out? Oh, this was when it was in the greenhouse?
Yeah, and they opened to the public then. Liverpool graffiti, John Lennon.
John Lennon?
Yeah.
That wasn't John Lennon, was it?
John Lennon from the Beatles.
Oh, he graffitied the Calder Stones.
Yeah. This is now rubber. So it does stray car tyres and all that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't cause any more environmental damage.
Because they were getting affected by moisture, were they, in the greenhouse?
Yeah,
it's not a great day, but thanks, Roy, anyway. Thank you.
No problem.
Further discoveries are being made about these stones on a fairly consistent basis, and back in only 2015 a schoolboy discovered this bird motif that I couldn't really film. It's low down to the ground, but this is what it looks like. Proof that schoolboys do sometimes pay attention and can produce something constructive. But it is clearly marked out by some form of metal implement, probably ironage. So much for it nearly being summer, but hey, at least they've now called an election. I'm getting as drenched as Rishi Sunak today. What an absolutely terrible day it is for filming in Liverpool. Whose idea was this? Now, do you remember earlier I mentioned that earliest written record, a boundary dispute from 1586? No? Well, that made reference as well to the fact that one of the Calder Stones was removed in around 1550. So I've travelled a short way from the park now to take you to have a look at something really rather interesting. Now, this is a wonderfully British thing. At the corner of Archerfield Road, note Archerfield for later, and Booker Avenue, we have this. It has a mumbo-jumbo name, I'm afraid. It's called Robinhoodsstone, but we will politely ignore that. Now, the idea is that this is possibly the stone that was referred to in that 1586 document as having been removed from the Calder Stones. Up until 1928, it was located in a nearby field called Stone Hay. Lots of clues there to suggest some longevity of its location there. Hay, I think, is Old English for enclosure. It has been looked at, and it is the same sandstone as the Calder Stones. I'm sure those of you out there that are mythically inclined will feel uncomfortable about it being caged like this. And Alfredwatkins, the inventor of leylines, described it back in 1927. He thinks it's like a ley hunter's map to show the ley lines in this area, which seems a bit odd because surely you just feel the pulsing energy of the ley lines and not need a map, but never mind. They don't represent ley lines because they don't exist. Local legends say that these deep grooves that we can see carved into Robin Hood's stone arise from the sharpening of arrowheads, And it is said that back in the time of Henry VIII, the Fieldstone hay had a series of archery butts, and that's where we get the Archerfield Road from. But others suggest that these deeply incised channels were created by the Druids to channel the blood from their human sacrifices into the ground. I always seem to say things like that in that peculiar voice. Before the stone was disrupted in the 1920s, it was excavated around 1910, and below the ground level we have this amazing range of further Neolithic carvings, and I have to say I think it all looks very similar to what we've seen at the Calder Stones. On this charming plaque erected in 1928, we've got a directional arrow, and it refers to the original site being 198 feet in that direction. So naturally I'm going to go and see if I can find that. So this is the owner of the house that now stands on the site where the Robin Hood stone stood in the middle of Stonehay Field before it was moved in 1928.
Well, you're talking something to me, and I don't know nothing about it.
So the stone would have stood approximately where number 11 Greenwood Road it now stands, and Peter Foo, who lives there, very kindly let me film that for inclusion in the video. Really interesting guy actually, who played a role in the Inn of the Sixth Happiness in the 1950s with Ingrid Bergman.
And that, after 60 years, we went to thingy.
Oh, you went back to Snowdonia?
Yeah. And yeah, I'll see, that's me with the kid on my back. Yeah, that's me there.
With Ingrid Bergman?
Yeah.
Well, I think I know where that is. I make films about Roman stuff. I think you're on the Roman Road there.
I can't remember.
You filmed on the Roman Road, yeah?
Yeah. See, that's me there.
A huge thanks to Chris for suggesting this. I really enjoyed visiting the location, and also many thanks to both Roy and Peter for so enthusiastically joining in with the proceedings. Now the ending will be fine because they always are on the Coastal Catalogue for some reason. It just leaves me to say please like and subscribe, all the normal sort of stuff, and buy me a coffee, please. Cross the Mersey.